Hello.
Hello?
Yes, you can start now.
Okay. Shall I leave some minutes so people to get connected or no need?
Hello.
Yes, okay, okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this presentation. Today I'm going to be talking about conceptual design and how this is important to get a GMP compliant facility. My name is Rafael Beaus. I'm Global Consultancy Manager at Tester. And if you have any question, please feel free to make it. I'm going to stop the video so that quality goes better. Okay, we're going to be talking after a brief introduction, after the steps to follow in a facility design, what information is needed to do a good design, some comments about utilities, architecture, and the layout, and equipment considerations. Everything will be shown in an example, which is going to be taking most part of the presentation so that you have the practical idea on how to do things. We're going to see last industry trends, and finally, we're going to get to a conclusion. I hope you like it, and any question you have, please feel free to do it. If you are interested in the presentation, it will be shared, so no problem. Okay, when we're talking about a facility, it is clear that we have to think about the operations taking place inside. We are not going to do a facility according to the outside of the facility. We have to consider what operations are going to be taking place inside, how different pieces of equipment are going to be maintained, and all the different steps. Because according to that, we're going to be doing the design, and afterwards, we're going to be having the facility accordingly. The design has a very important goal, which is minimizing mistakes. With a bad design, it's very difficult to have a completely GMP compliant facility. With a good design, you are helping people to avoid mistakes. Let me give you a good example. If you want to avoid people getting into a clean area and out of the clean area having cross-contamination, you can have a very detailed procedure where you explain that when the light of the access to the chamber is green, you can get in. Then you have to be sure that when you get out, you put everything in a bag. Or, most simple, you have different way in and out. You avoid 100% the cross-contamination. So you see that a good design is leaving you in the best scenario to be able to comply with GMPs. So what we have to get is avoiding mistakes. We have to allow for effective cleaning and maintenance. Again, if we are thinking of a facility that want to be according to the current trends, you have to think that most of it is out of the area. Only the critical parts are inside the area. You minimize the clean room, and at the same time, you are helping maintenance people to do the needed operation. If we talk about a lyophilizer, today you only have inside the clean room the door where you're going to be loading, and it is just what we call a slot door, a very small door, so that everything gets into the area. All the rest of the lyophilizer is outside the area, and that's to help doing the operations, maintaining the cleanliness of the area. Also, we would like what we want to have with the good design is we want to prevent cross-contamination, as I have explained in this example, dust, dirtiness accumulation, and any adverse effect in the product quality. So it is important, the design, to have the better product quality. There are several factors that contribute to the quality of products, and this is something we have to take into account. Of course, the quality of the materials we are using to produce, starting materials, packaging materials, the processes themselves, they have to be validated and according to what is written. Personnel is very important. The best design will not work with the personnel that is not trained, that is not committed to do things in a proper way. Procedures that have to be explaining how to do things to this personnel. Equipment has to be the appropriate equipment. It's not the same if we have a machine that has been thought to do a certain process in a certain way, that if we get a machine that is not ready for that and we try to use it. It will not work. Of course, and this is the point that we are going to be focusing on today, facility design and the quality, production environment. So finally, the design has to cover this environment. And if any of these points is not working well, we will have a problem in the product quality. So all products have to be linked, all systems have to be linked, all systems have to work well. So important in our case, we're going to be talking about the facility design and the quality. Okay, what is the main contamination source in an area? People. Only sitting down, we are delivering 100,000 particles per minute. If we move actively, we will even get to 5 million. If we run, 7.5. And if we do a very active exercise, between 50 and 30 million. And this is important, and that's the reason why we are having layers. When we get people into the area, we are adding more layers and more layers and more layers. So this is the idea, that we are getting these people out of the area if possible and adding layers if not. And why we are talking about particles? Well, because it's not only particles, it's also about microorganisms, which is something we have to care. We are a accumulation of microorganisms in our body. So we have in the human body many different places where we have microorganisms. So avoid always to expose surfaces of your body in the environment. And even we think, I have cleaned my hands. Never mind. You are having microorganisms over there. So we have to avoid as much as possible to have any exposed surface of our body. Talking about the design of facility, there are questions we will be making. How shall we start? Okay, what is the beginning? Are we talking of a green project or a van project? We'll see this in a minute. What are the pharmaceutical forms that we are going to be handling? Which are the products and what amounts? So what steps shall we cover finally? So getting information is important, of course. We have to start little by little. We'll see the steps, but from concept to detailed design. And we have to think about future. It's not only talking about the facility that we will have in 2 years, 3 years time once we finish. It's also thinking about what will happen later on. Also, we have to think, and it's also a question to make, where are we going to be selling our products? So what are the GMPs we have to consider when we are talking about this facility? Is it going to be only for our local market, or is something that we are going to be selling outside? And we have to get in advance to what is coming. So what are the changes in the regulation expected? So are we thinking something will change? We cannot finalize the facility and immediately it's not compliant with the regulations that are in place in that moment. So this is also important to take into account. And once we have the questions replied, then we can start with the design. Let's start designing. So once we have the questions replied, we will design. Let's start with the different steps we have to follow. So as I said, we will start with the initial design. First, we have to think, we have to decide what we want to do. So this is what we have in URS, user requirement specification. We have to have a kind of that. It doesn't matter if it's too detailed or not, but obviously, if we don't have into consideration this, we will have a mess. It will be impossible to have clear information about that. So we have to know what we want to do and write it down. And this is the starting point. Once we have that, maybe we could do a feasibility study where we think if the investment needed, we will be okay according to what we expect. But immediately we will start with the concept design. This is the moment where what we have in mind will become something in paper, something in a document. After the URS, we are designing our facility. What we will include in URS are type of products. We will have also number of units we want to produce. We'll see in the sample, which will make easier to understand. After the concept design, we'll have a more detailed design, what we call basic engineering, and then the detail engineering. These two steps are leading us to the final design of the facility, is the engineering phase. After that, we will work for the construction, where we are going to be building the facility. We will validate it and we will get the handover. So you have to go step by step. You cannot start doing the last steps before you have the initial ones. Everything has to go according to a logical flow. So what will be included in the conceptual engineering? What is there? So we need URS, and these URS have to show us what are the production processes that will take place in there. Without that, it's impossible to do a good design. I remember with a client a long time ago, they wanted to go for a solid forms facility, and as we were evolving in the design, it ended up with a small volume parenteral. So why? Because at the beginning, this client didn't have a good idea of what to do. So once we were starting, we said, okay, what production processes you want to have here? We also need an overview of the plot we're going to have. If we're talking of a greenfield, nothing built, it's going to be easier. We have enough surface to build, perfect. But maybe we have to adapt our processes to an existing facility. So that's why we have to get this question also answered. Is there anything existing or everything will be new? We need to know as well, okay, we know the processes, how much we want to produce there. It's not the same a facility where we're going to be producing 1 million units or a facility where we're going to be producing 100 million units. It's not the same if we're going to need 1 line or if we're going to need 5 lines. The facility will be completely different. And also, we have to know about the regulations, where we are going to be selling, what are the specific requests for this market. Even though today we have this, what we call international regulations, PICs, European regulations, US FDA regulations, where practically the requirements are the same. So small differences, but if you make a facility that is compliant with one of those requirements, it will be compliant with the others. So this is something. And once we have this, what we call URS or basis of design, then we can start. And we will start with a layout of the plant. We will discuss and we'll see what are the flow of people, what are the materials, what are the waste flows. Everything has to be considered. When we talk about materials, we have to think about samples that will go to quality control. We have to think about any material getting into the area. Again, I like to explain that in one of our projects, we were thinking of how to bring everything to the end, but we skipped because the client did not mention, and we were not thinking on that at that moment, about the sampling plates that will be used in the area. And quality control was very far away. So we had to redo part of the design because we didn't think initially about how to bring the sampling plates for microbiological control to the area. Once this was redesigned, we had a very nice flow with everything being considered. With this initial layout, we talk about block diagrams. We know what is done in every place. And we also talk about a list of production equipment and utilities that will be needed. If we're going to be needing nitrogen, it will have to be considered in that moment. If we're going to be having water for injection, also we need to consider in this initial concept design. And very important for many of the people, will have a good estimation on budget. Without a first concept design, it's impossible to know what is the investment needed. And you will understand easily, if we talk about 1 line or about 5 lines, the investment has nothing to do. And that's why when we are asked, how much does it cost to have this facility done? Let us go for the concept design, conceptual design, and later on I can give you the idea. As I said, and it's not part of this presentation, later on we'll have basic, detailed engineering, and then we can start building. What information we need for the concept design, which is the focus here. We were talking, remember the questions we were making about what type of project we're talking about. Okay, so we need to develop the basis of design, as I said, the URS. Let's start asking questions and answering them. Site layout. Is it a greenfield project? Then it's easy. We can start as we want. We have a plot and we work for that. It's important to have, in the case of a greenfield project, what we call a site master plan, which is something that is showing you where the different buildings are going to be. Even now, we can work only in one building, okay? In this example, you can see here, and it's a real example, we were working only in production unit number 1, but we knew already where the amenity building was going to be placed, where the production number unit 2 and unit 3 were going to be placed, where the service building was going to be placed, because we have also to think about the flow of materials, people inside the plot, inside the area. So that's why we were focusing in the production unit number 1, but at the same time, we were considering the whole thing. So if we have a greenfield project, let's start thinking about a site master plan to place everything in the right position. It will make things easier for us. Let's talk about the next question. What are the products we're going to produce here? It is not the same if we're talking about a sterile production site or a non-sterile production site. Are we talking about high potent drugs or just generic products? What processes are going to be applicable? This is something we must know. Without this, again, the facility could be whatever. The list of products, we need it. It's something that will be part of the basis of design of the URS. It is much easier, of course, if we talk about a dedicated facility. If we talk about a facility that is going to be used only for one product and it's not a multi-purpose facility, it's going to be much easier to build it. We don't have to care about the cross-contamination if there's only a product. Okay. When we talk about the process description, we don't need all the detailed steps, but we need at least a process flow diagram where we can see in a schematic form the different steps. Why? Because these steps will have to be considered when we do the design. Batch size. This is something that will be also estimating, even we don't know, as we need to get the volume that will be required. Is not the same if we are having a facility for very active products of 20 kilos batches, or if we talk of large volume parenterals with 5,000 liter batches. So the facility has nothing to do. When we talk about that, and we talk about the volume to be produced, we are always asking to have X years forecast, normally 3-5 years. Why? Because we don't want the facility to be finished, and immediately when we finish, it is already small, and we have to go 1 year later for an enlargement of the facility. So the capacity study is something that we are starting with always. We work with capacity study if not done by the client. We have to analyze, we will see with this capacity study what type of machines are needed and the quantity. With this detail on equipment needed, we can then do the first layout. When we talk about the process description, you can see that we have this type of boards where we have all the different steps that we are having in the production. From the initial part, from sampling, weighing, loading of the reactor, of the bin, mixing. So all the steps could be liquid, could be solid, doesn't matter. We will have all the steps detailed in a chart so that we can see that we are not missing anything. Also, in the capacity study, we will have to take into account everything: cleaning, maintenance, the time we are working here, number of holidays, the holidays that we are having there. So this is something needed for the capacity study. Another point that we will discuss with clients, and we can always suggest, but it's something that will be done with clients, is what approach should be taken when we are doing the design. Are we going to do something vertical, horizontal, a mix? So depending on the plot that we have, we'll have to do it vertical if we don't have enough surface. This is something quite common in some countries, like in Bangladesh, where you don't have much surface to build, so you go up instead of in a horizontal way. It has some advantages, some disadvantages. So this is something to consider always. We have something mixed most of the times. This is also a real example where we're having the warehouse in the bottom part, and a production floor with the technical area, another production floor and the technical area. So this is something mixed. You're having something horizontal, but at the same time, we are working in a vertical way. Also, when we are talking about that, we have to take into account what areas are needed to be considered. okay, is something that is completely new and independent, we will have to consider everything in it. But imagine it's part of an existing complex. Maybe the QC lab or the warehouse are already existing. Then we will forget about that. Are we needing an R&D area in this new design or not? Do we need special rooms, what we call about special room offices? If we are talking of an independent building, very likely we need offices for the people. But if it's part of a complex, maybe we will need only the minimum number of offices, because the rest, administration, is not there. Are we needing the praying area there or not? Are we needing toilets, canteen, or canteen will be out of there? So laundry, all this has to be replied, because we have to do a good design based on that. And linked to that, we need to know, at least roughly, manpower requirements. How many men, how many women? We do an estimation, because the toilets will be sized according to that. Also, operating times and shifts is not the same. A facility working in a single shift that if we work 3 shifts, 27 days a week. So this is different. Also, we will be asking if there are utilities there. Are you having utilities from existing facilities before or not? Everything has to be brand new. So this is something to consider in our design. As I was mentioning also in the questions to be asked, what are the GMP requirements that we are going to consider? So what are the regulatory standards that we have to comply with so that we take them into consideration? Are we going to be using existing machinery or everything will be new? And what is the needed capacity? This is also something that will be taken into consideration. Utilities, as I said, and containment strategy. If we are talking of high potent products, of course, we will need the containment strategy definition in detail. And this is something that could be done as an independent document. Many times we are doing that when we talk about high potent. And of course, any other requirement that is needed from client. If we talk about big multinationals, maybe they have corporate policies that have to be complied. If you are working already with some brand names, maybe you want to use the same brand names for machinery, for utilities, for whatever, the type of clean room you need. So all these considerations are taken into account when we do the design. A brief point about utilities architecture and layout. This is coming from the WHO. We have 3 possibilities. One is talk about product protection. If we talk about sterile, many times this is the main point. We can talk about personal protection. When we talk about high potent, this is something to take into consideration. And we talk about environment protection. When we talk about better atomics, this is something we take into account, or poisonous products. Many times when we do the design, we have to balance between the 3, okay? And so these are the steps to take into account. We will always design from the process core, from the most critical area to the outside. So this is the cleanest area when we have when we are doing the most critical operation. We will have different layers of clean rooms, ancillary areas, and outdoor environment. And the other important point is we have to do things in the less level of needed cleanliness. This is what we have to do. Because if not, we are doing things, we are overdoing. And this is spending money without sense. So if you can do something in a D grade, don't do it in B, because you are overdoing and there's no need for that. Segregation. Why we are talking about differentiating between ancillary areas and critical areas? We have to do things properly, and this means we will have to differentiate between GMP and non-GMP areas. Someone of you may say this is very easy. It's not that easy. We had a client that, asked us to validate some offices that were not GMP offices, were just normal offices, and the client asked us to do the validation of the area. Say, look, no need for that. I want it. Okay, you want it, we do it. It's not the same when I talk about an office. If we talk about an office in the clean area, then of course this is part of the clean area. But if not, no need to do a validation for that. Also, we have to differentiate areas for certain products. We will make things easier. You segregate things. Also, you have to as I said already, lowest level of cleanliness, and we have to avoid the crossing of flows. This is something we have to prevent in the design. We have to have flows that are linear, that avoid going up and down, going from one side to the other. So this is the best way to avoid the prevention. The other thing to take into account in maintenance, of course, we're going to be having as much as possible maintenance done outside the clean area. Okay, so whatever we get into the area, this is also something to get into consideration. We do it through airlocks. Could be personal, then we talk about changing rooms, could be materials, but you must design the airlocks for that. And that's why, going back to the beginning, we need to know exactly what is getting into the area. Okay. Also, we are using filters to get the air to the right quality. And also remember, we have to classify the areas according to the international regulations to get the right level of cleanliness over there. Okay, what we will develop with these ideas that we have been talking. Okay, we will have process flow diagrams, we'll have the production area layout, we'll have room classification and pressure distribution layouts, personnel flows, the design of the different airlocks, basic equipment layout. So these are the things we're going to be taking into consideration that we're going to be delivering. And sometimes the final result is like that you'd say, whoa, impossible to know what is here. We have classifications, we have the different materials, but if we go little by little and we start thinking about the different classification of the areas from laminar flows grade A, environment B, C in the areas next to the clean room, and D in the outside, we can start thinking about the different flows of packaging materials, this is personal, about non-classified and classified people in the area, how to get starting materials there, how to get the primary packaging materials in the different lines, secondary packaging materials, the bulk going from one side to the other and how we do it, finished product, waste material and how we get it out of the area and to the end. And finally, as you have seen, the total result is that. Okay, let me give you brief considerations about equipment. We have to decide always that equipment fit for the purpose. If you have a machine that is not thought for a aseptic process, it will be very difficult to use it there. It's not as simple as getting a machine not ready to work in a aseptic area and putting it there. It will not work, okay? So we have to consider that. Also, as I said, if some machines are existing or all of them are new. We will have to have a list of this equipment, and sometimes early in the development, as some machinery have a very large delivery date, we have to buy it. So right from the beginning, and this is something to take into account. Any special feature needed for this machine will have to be considered and will have to be detailed in the URS. Let me show you an example, very easy to understand. So in this example, we were talking about a new plant. When we talk about a product, we receive a list of products with the amounts, the forecasted amounts to be produced over there, and they gave us a site location. As you see, it's in the middle of nowhere, and this was the plot, and this was the area. Sorry, 64,000 square meters, which is quite a large area. When talking about the products, as I was explaining at the beginning, we had to decide which products were going where, and we had to classify that. So from the list of products, we identified immediately there were some beta-lactamics, antibiotics, solid dose, some generics, also solid dose, injectables, and retrovirals. This immediately led us to something, which is that we needed an independent facility for beta-lactamics that cannot be produced in the same facility where we are producing the others. And because of these other products are generic products, but they were too large, we finally went for 3 facilities. One for beta-lactamics, the other one for solid dose, and the other one for sterile products. And the retrovirals we were evaluating that could be produced in the same, in this case, in the same facility where we were producing the solid dose. As I said in the beginning of the presentation, we were seeing what were the different processes: dry granulation, we were talking about wet granulation in some cases, coated tablets, or capsules. So this is something we consider. When we were seeing these products, we have to see which products were for wet granulation, which ones were going through dry granulation or direct mixing. And this leads us to a classification. And also, what are the machinery that is needed for every step? Fluid bed dryer, compactor, blender to do the different operations. We were also seeing about tablets, about what needs to be, which ones were tablets, which ones were coated, which ones were capsules. And also we were classifying products according to that. And also what equipment was needed to do that, tablet press, coating machines, capsule filling machines. Once we had that, and let's see one of the examples, product 5, it's a coated tablet for wet granulation, as we can see, as we have seen in the different steps. We were producing close to 28 million units per year, and it's a tablet of 1 gram, 1,000 milligrams. So we were defining the machine needed, and we went for that. The largest machine in this case, this is a real machine, 3,000, with the capacity to work in batches between 600 and 2,000 liters, from 320 kilograms to 1.2. That's the idea. We have the selection of a machine, and we define batch size. We work also for the rest of machines that are needed for the production process, in this case, tablet press machine, coating machine. The same exercise was done for all products, okay? I'm showing here product number 5. We are doing the same for every product, discussing what are the needed machines. With this, we have a first idea. Okay, then next, we must know what are the number of days we are working so that we have a good idea of the capacity. In this case, we are also considering downtime for holidays and maintenance, and we will consider also a percentage of effective time. We will never think 100% of the time will be used for production, okay? Always there is availability of people, quality control, training, so we will never have 100% of the time completely productive time. With that, and also thinking into the time needed for starting the machinery, validation, maintenance, we'll have also another safety percentage here so that we don't have 100% of the capacity of the machine used. We use normally 75% in the case of equipment. Okay, once we have that, we decided to go for 2 tablet machines. Why? Because we see that with this amount of equipment, with this number of machines, we could produce the amount of batches needed. This is not only number 5, product number 5, this is for all products. And we see we start in, this is an old example, with 400 batches, we end up with 600 at the end of the process that we are considering here of this time. And we see that we have some available capacity here, but not at the end. So 2 equipment is enough, but we were thinking that 3 were needed because if not, we will end up with last year not capacity available. Okay, so we do the same operation for the fluid bed dryer. Again, we think about how many equipment, and we realized there were needed 3 equipment, and we are doing this for all the different machines. Finally, what we get is that we need 4 fluid bed dryers, 3 coating machines, 4 tablet press machines. This is the calculation done according to the different type of equipment and capacity needed, 1 capsule filling machine, and 4 blister lines. Okay, we know, our experience knows that, makes us know that this is the surface that you need to do that. And we also need some ancillary areas. So very easy. Once we have that, we said that we were needing 4 fluid bed dryers. We place them here, 3 coating machines according to the calculations, 4 tablet press machines, 1 capsule filling, 4 blister lines. In this case, we will need for sure, and this is always a dispensing area and a warehouse. You see that we are placing them very easily. We will need 4 secondary packaging areas. In this case, it's manual packed, but it is ready in case we want to have a secondary packaging machine. We need some areas for format, washing, working process, Technical areas also have to be considered, reception and some offices over here, and that's it. Some corridors, and we have one of the design of the layers, the first floor of the facility. You see how easy this is once we know everything that we need. We go for the same in the second floor, quality control lab, dressing rooms, a canteen, maintenance workshop, training room, technical areas, and some offices, corridors, and that's it. We have the second floor. So we define here, as I said, the different flows, air cleanliness, differential pressures, also the temperature and relative humidity needed, and also the material, everything is considered here. We will do the same for the other two facilities. Remember, we had one for injectables and the other one for antibiotics. And with that, we know here everything fits, and we still have a lot of room to go for that. So you see that this is the needed step. Without that, without the concept design, impossible to do. We will do that in BIM, in 3D, so that we can work about that. In some cases, some people are doing a mock-up to see how this works. It's not common. What we are doing in 3D allows us to go and see if it works without any major problem. Let me go, because we are running out of time, directly to this last trends. As I said, we get people out of the process. So restricted access barrier systems or isolators. This is very common now, more than the classical clean room. Automatic loading systems, always for lyophilizers, in auto place more and more. Modular facilities, if possible, and also in existing facilities, we work leaving always some room for enlargement in future, so that we don't have to build everything from zero. Also, single-use facilities is something we are seeing more and more. And let's get to the conclusion. Facilities and equipment shall be placed, designed, built, and maintained according to the operations that will take place inside. Remember, we are designing from the inside to the outside and not the opposite. We need to get a good basis of design. Without knowing what will be done in the factory or by whom, it will be impossible to do a design. Make it simple. You agree on a concept design, you freeze it, and then you go little by little for next steps. Don't go immediately to get the detail of what has to be done. And also remember to think about future needs. Don't forget that this facility will be built, but then it's going to be used for many years. Go step by step, but think also about the future. And well, with a little bit out of time, but that's the presentation. I don't know if you have any question, anything you want to see or to ask. Very likely, if you have something, I'll be willing to reply. I don't know, maybe you can send a mail and we can answer. Okay, as I don't know how we should be getting questions here. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation.
Okay.